Welcome to Bald Guy DIY. In this video, I'm going to share with you some ideas I have about buying things from auction for the purpose of DIY projects and give you a few tips on things to be on the lookout for. Over the last few years, I found a few reliable auction sites for my area that I like to use in order to find materials, furniture, and other things that I can repurpose and use for my home, business, and escape room. Some of you might already use auctions quite a bit. For me, I don't use auctions all that often, but I do when I have particular types of needs for things that are harder to come by or more expensive in other ways. Sometimes when we do DIY projects, we think that we have to start from scratch, and there's certainly a place for that. But sometimes starting with a good foundation of a strong piece of furniture or a good sound foundation of metal or wood, whatever the thing is that you're building, it can really save you a lot of time and energy to start with something that's already existing and then repurpose it or refinish it to meet your particular needs. As I've discussed in previous DIY videos where I talk about when to DIY and when not to, it's important to realize the total cost of a project, and that's made up of many different things, including the materials, the labor required, tooling, and all of that. One of the ways that you can shortcut the process is to use something that already exists, as long as it isn't going to take too much labor to get it to the condition that you want in the end. So that's something you're going to have to weigh on a particular project. Is it more worthwhile to start from scratch, having to do the whole thing yourself, or can you start with something already existing and then repurpose it or add to it, modify it, or refinish it in order to get your finished product? In my experience, especially in my escape room business, it's been a great benefit to use existing, well-made, but slightly used and run-down furniture in order to repurpose it and have it exactly what I need for my escape room scenarios. It's durable, it's strong, it's good quality stuff, but maybe it's a little dated, or the finish isn't what I want it to be, or it needs to be painted or modified in some other way in order to get what I want from it. Whatever project you're working on, when you're considering the cost of the project, definitely consider what type of used options there are. That might be an online listing service like Craigslist, or where I am more like Kijiji, but also think about auctions, because depending on what you're looking for and how strict your guidelines are for what you need, an auction can be a great source of materials and often a lot cheaper than it would be even to buy it used from an online site. With that being said, I want to give 3 precautions when you're using auctions to find DIY materials, and hopefully they'll benefit you and not lead to any big mistakes of investment that you really don't want to make. The first thing I want to talk about is just making sure that you clearly understand the requirements of the particular auction company that you're using. If you're using an online service, make sure you read up on what the actual auction structure is, how the bids work, what kind of proxy bidding that can be done, or what kind of maximum bidding, all of the different nuances that go into it. Make sure that you understand them completely, because it's easy to get too far into something or to miss out on things simply because you don't understand the rules. I've been using government auction sites, and those don't have a buyer's premium, but if you're using private auctions, those auctioneers make their money typically by adding a premium onto the final bid price. So it's important that you understand what the premium is. Maybe it's 10, 20, 30%. And so you're automatically figuring out on top of the final bid price what that buyer's premium is going to be. You're going to be required to pay the whole thing, so make sure that you're aware of that ahead of time. Some of the other differences I've seen between auction sites is how they handle bidding at the end of the auction. One of the particular sites that I use, it's a good strategy to get in there at the very last second and try to get that last bid in order to lock in your price. But on another auction site that I use, every time a bid is placed in the last minute, it adds 2 minutes to the time in order to get the most money out of the auction item. The rules of that auction prevent you from getting that last second bid in, and you have to be a little more strategic and be aware of the total amount that you're willing to spend and not go over that. With almost every auction, there's a tendency to get caught up in the moment and get really attached to something. And so that's of course something that you have to guard against. Have a really clear idea of what the total amount you're willing to spend is before you start bidding on that particular item, and then hold to it, even if you feel like you can get it for just a little bit more. In the end, you're not going to have buyer's remorse. Some of the other things that are important to read about at the auction is when the item will have to be picked up, if it can be shipped, what additional costs there might be, and what kind of payment that they take at the end of the auction. All of those things are important to know ahead of time because there can be some nasty surprises if you don't do the research and then find out later on down the road. The second thing that I want to mention, especially if it's something that has specifications like a piece of electrical equipment or tooling, is that you make absolute sure that you know which model it is that you're actually bidding on. It's easy to see something that looks similar to what you're looking for and think that it's the exact model, but because they're auctions and they're used equipment, sometimes it's an older model that's lacking some features, or a similar model but one that has a different set of features or benefits than the item that you're ideally looking for. If you don't do that research ahead of time, it's easy to buy something, commit to it, be all excited that you found it, and maybe even think you got a great deal on it, when because of the different features, maybe you even paid too much, or you're stuck with something that you don't want. So make sure that you really look into the model specifications and be sure that it's something that matches your needs and what you're actually looking for. Most auctions also don't do a great job of explaining all of the features of something or even exactly what the piece of equipment does. So spending that extra time researching the model numbers and making sure that you know exactly what it all contains is really important before you get started spending your hard-earned money. The last aspect I want to mention is just that you read thoroughly through the descriptions to make sure you know the condition of the item. It might look fine, in fact it might look fantastic from the pictures on the listing, but there might just be a single line buried in the description that tells you that the device wasn't working properly the last time somebody used it, or that it's going to need major repairs, or that it's just for parts, or many other different things that could tell you that it's not the kind of working product that you expect it to be. Now, of course, that doesn't really matter if you're expecting to take something and totally repurpose it, and if you don't need it to be in a functional condition, because maybe it's going to act as decor or furniture. But if you do need those features to be working, make sure that you check the listing thoroughly to see that there aren't any condition situations that would tell you that it's not working or that it needs to be repaired. Of course, there are certain kinds of things like buying vehicles or other equipment that has a lot of consumable parts or things that break down commonly that you'll need to research and know a lot about. Of course, it always helps to have a lot of knowledge about a particular type of product or equipment or furniture so that you know what to look for. But even if you do know what to look for and you're an expert, if you miss that one line that says that it's not functioning or that it's missing pieces, you could be really disappointed in the end. So don't get complacent. Make sure that you check those listings thoroughly and look for those items that could spell out potential problems down the road. One big red flag for me is if the current bid price is way below what I think it should be, it probably means that there's a condition issue of why other people are not bidding as enthusiastically for it. So make sure that you're following those three things. Read up on the auction site itself and make sure that you understand the rules, all the costs, shipping, and all of that. Make sure that you know the specifications of the item that you're bidding on and don't just assume that it has certain features or options without looking into it. And lastly, make sure that you check for any condition clauses which would tell you that it's not functional or that it's going to require a lot more investment than you're ready to put into it. With those simple tips in mind, we can all be a little more successful when we're using auction sites to source our own materials and products for our DIY projects. What kind of auctions do you use and what kind of strategies do you have? If you want to share them, leave them in the comments below or send me an email. My information's in the description. If you like these DIY ideas and discussions, let me know by giving the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel as I post a new video every week on a wide variety of DIY and electrical topics. That's all I have to share with you in this video, but come back again soon as I've got a lot more projects on the go. And until next time, whether you're working on just one project or going once, going twice, don't be afraid to be bolder.